The Distance Between Us, Part 1, Chapter 12. In November, Mommy found a job at a record shop downtown. She usually got home around 7 when it was dark. The road in front of my grandmother's house was made of dirt and covered with so many potholes and rocks that taxis and buses wouldn't come near the house. Mommy had to walk from the main road to our house in the dark, since there were no streetlights. One evening, my grandmother sent Carlos to wait for Mommy and walk her home. Usually my uncle waited for her, but that night he hadn't come home yet. Mago and I sat on Abuelita Chinta's bed and turned on the radio to listen to story time, where we got to listen to fairy tales and fables. Mommy arrived by herself. "Where's Carlos?" we asked. Betty ran to Mommy wanting to be picked up. "I don't know. He wasn't waiting for me," she said. Mago and I looked at each other. I stood up and peeked out the door. There was nothing out there but the train tracks, the canal gurgling, the lonely whistle of the last train announcing its departure from the station. The wind rustled the branches of the trees. The fireflies played peekaboo among the bushes, and I wanted to go out and chase them, trap them in my cupped hands, and set them free inside Abuelita Chinta's house, where they could glow above us like stars. "Let's go look for him," Mago said. We made our way to the canal and peered into the darkness, but no one was coming across the bridge. We waited, shivering in the cool night breeze, chanting and Our Father under our breaths to keep La Llorona away, the weeping woman who roams the canals and steals children away. "What if La Llorona got him?" I asked Mago, my eyes getting teary at the thought of my brother lying in the depths of the canal, never to be seen again. Then we saw him making his way toward us from the other side of the bridge. "Where were you?" Mago asked. Carlos walked with his head hanging low. "Nowhere." "What do you mean, nowhere? We were worried about you." Carlos kept walking away, and we rushed to catch up with him. "Leave me alone," he said. He went into the house and didn't answer Mommy when she asked him where he'd been. He didn't want to eat dinner. He lay down on his cot and didn't speak to us for the rest of the evening. "What's gotten into him?" Mago asked me the next day. Carlos still refused to tell us what was wrong. "I don't know," I said. I took a drink of cool water from the clay pot in the kitchen and ran back outside, where my friends and I were playing jump rope. I loved Abuelita Street. In the evening, the rays of the setting sun painted the dirt road the color of baked clay. Women sat outside their homes on wicker chairs, embroidering cloth napkins, or reading a magazine while listening to boleros on the radio. In clusters or alone, men returned home from work. Some came from the cornfields covered with sweat and dirt, with their machetes hanging at their sides from a string of rawhide. Others, like my uncle, came from the train station, looking like ghosts, covered from head to toe with the powder that seeped out of the cement bags they loaded and unloaded all day long. Back with Abuela Avila, we'd never been allowed outside, and we'd only had one another to play with. But there with Abuelita Chinta, all the neighborhood kids came out to play. The train tracks provided hours of fun. We had contests to see who could jump over the most ties, or who could balance herself the longest on the rails. Sometimes we put pieces of scrap metals on the tracks, and after the train swished by, we ran to pick them up. As I jumped rope with my friends, I looked over at the house and saw Mago in there looking miserable. Even though Betty had taken my place as the baby of the family, Mago still treated me like her baby, and most of the time she refused to help with Betty. Sometimes she didn't have a choice, and whenever Abuelita Chinta had errands to run, Mago was left in charge of all of us, especially Betty. As soon as Mommy came home from work that night, Mago dumped Betty onto her lap. "She's your sister," Mommy said. "But not my daughter," Mago said. Mommy shook her head and walked away. She helped Abuelita Chinta prepare dinner while holding Betty in one arm. "Only refried beans and a chunk of cheese," Mommy said. "That's all we're eating tonight?" "There are people who won't be eating dinner tonight, Juana. Let us be thankful," Abuelita Chinta said as she scooped the beans into our bowls. "I can't believe your father doesn't send any money for you kids," Mommy said to us. "He's probably spending it on that woman." "Juana, we'll be okay," Abuelita Chinta said. "You're here now with your children. I'm sure that's enough for them." "You're right, Ama. Things are going to get better really soon." I got up and went to Mommy. I wanted to hold her. I wanted to tell her I'd rather eat beans for the rest of my life as long as she was with me. But the look she gave me scared me. It was almost as if she hated me. "You look just like your father," she said to me. I glanced at the man behind the glass, and for the first time I was not happy to take after him. I didn't want Mommy to look at me like that, a look of pain, anger, hatred. I wanted to grab the man behind the glass and toss him onto the railroad tracks for the train to shatter him to pieces, so Mommy wouldn't look at him and look at me and think we were one and the same. Abuelita Chinta set the bowl of beans onto the table and ruffled my hair. Why don't you kids go buy some sodas? When you come back, the beans won't be so hot. We took the money and left. So what's the matter with you? Mago asked Carlos as soon as we were out of earshot. You're going to get mad if I tell you. Just spit it out, Mago said. Mommy has a boyfriend, Carlos said. What? Mago and I said at the same time. I saw her with a man. He said that the previous night many buses had come and gone, but Mommy hadn't come. He'd been afraid of standing there in the dark, alone, putting himself in danger of getting beaten or killed by some crazy person, so he'd climbed up the tree near the tortilla mill. Minutes later, a taxi had pulled up, and Mommy and a man had gotten out. The taxi left, and as soon as it did, the man pulled Mommy into his arms and kissed her on the mouth. They kissed for a long time, Carlos said. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want Mommy to get mad at me, so when they were done kissing, I just watched the man get a taxi and go. Mommy started walking home, and I wanted to catch up to her, but I stayed up in the tree. I didn't want her to know that I'd seen her. What about Papi? I asked. Papi doesn't love her anymore, Mago said. But why doesn't Papi love her? I asked. Because he loves that other woman, Carlos said. We walked in silence the rest of the way, the words weighing down on us. At dinner, I could see how much Mago was struggling to keep from shouting that we knew our mother's secret. She had a scowl on her face, and whenever Mommy said something to her, Mago just grunted in response. What's going on with you? Mommy asked again. Then Mago couldn't hold back anymore and said, Mommy, who was that man? What man? The man you were kissing by the main road. Since Mommy was holding Betty on her lap, it was hard for me to see the expression on her face. She buried her face in Betty's hair as if hiding from our accusing eyes. Well, since you already know, I might as well tell you, she said finally. His name is Francisco. He sells car insurance, but at heart he's a wrestler. He does lucha libre on the weekends, and he's very good. Who cares? What is he to you? Mago asked. Don't talk to me like that, Mago, Mommy said, looking over Betty's head. Anyway, I might as well tell you now. I'm going away with him. What? We all yelled. Betty started to whimper at hearing our angry voices. Juana, what are you saying? Abuelita Chinta said. Francisco has gotten a contract to fight in Acapulco, and he asked me to go with him. I've accepted. But you can't go, Mago yelled. She got up so suddenly her chair toppled over. You can't. I won't be gone for long, Mommy said. Now sit down and stop yelling at me. You said that last time, Carlos said, and you were gone 2.5 years. Mommy, don't leave us again, I said as I rushed to her side. And what about us? Mago said. What's going to happen to us? You'll stay here. Your grandmother will watch over you. Juana, you can't do this, Abuelita Chinta said. It isn't right. When Papi hears of this, that you're leaving us again, don't you dare bring up your father to me, Mago. Mommy said. He left me. He left all of us. Juana, you need to think things through, Abuelita Chinta said above Betty's cries. Mommy got up and sighed. I have, Ama, and I've made my decision. When Mommy left, she didn't even have the courage to tell us. When Carlos, Mago, and I got home from school the next day, we found Betty in tears. Abuelita Chinta told us our mother had just left with the wrestler. They've gone to catch a taxi. Betty's sobs were uncontrollable. Mago picked her up and held her. Carlos and I took off running, hoping that Mommy and the wrestler might still be waiting by the main road. Carlos ran faster than me, and by the time I got there, he was bending over crying. There were no signs of Mommy anywhere.